Welcome to the Republican Professor. This morning we have with us Bob Zeinstra. Do you go by Bob or Robert?
I go by Bob, although, in all my written correspondence, I usually use Robert. I'm
Okay.
actually junior, and so I don't know.
Gotcha.
I just respect my dad that way.
Well, good morning, Bob. And we have Curtis joining
Morning.
us from Texas as well. Bob is in Texas and I'm in frozen California. We're freezing here. I got my Navy watch cap on.
Yeah.
And welcome, Bob. Good to have you.
Hey, it's really great to be here, Lucas and Curtis. Enjoy your podcast. Caught up recently on your JP interview, and just really excited to be here.
Oh, thanks.
We're excited to have you.
Yeah, I met Bob just to let you and everybody else know. I met Bob through mutual contact at our church here, Church of the Holy Communion. Guido Verbeck. He's a professor of science up at UNT, and that's where Bob went to reach out for your ministry, right? And we'll learn a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
But Guido and I go to church together, and so then you had come to our church as well, right? You visited there.
I haven't actually. It's interesting to say that. I'm going to visit with Father Charlie next week, and that'll be my first time at the church.
Okay.
But I did a theology on tap session once.
Yeah, that's what it was. Theology on tap, where we get around and talk theology, talk topics at our church anyway.
That sounds interesting. So you guys drink beer?
Oh,
and
yeah.
You do theology and you drink beer?
Oh, you can't. I don't think you can do theology without beer myself, but that's just a personal, view.
Yeah.
But we just go. We have a keg there at the church, and so we do a keg party, and sit around and enjoy beer or wine, and we have a barbecue, and it's mostly a bunch of guys sitting around, talking about theology and trying to get deep on things, how to do things in the culture. But anyway, that's the context in which I met Bob. And then I found out, oh, wow, this guy went to Talbot, and we had this shared experience. I just wanted to reach out and meet him. And so I did, and we went to lunch, and we kind of had a great lunch. That was a great couple hours.
Sure did.
So just learned about everything that he did. And that's what I want to talk to you about. So, or have you talk to us about?
Sure. I'm wide open. It's been a real blessing to be here in Texas for the short time I have, and God's opened a lot of doors for me. So happy to share.
Awesome.
So Bob, are you in? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask because I don't know. Bob, are you in corporate America or are you full-time missionary? Okay, tell me.
Yeah. My full-time job is I work for Toyota Motor North America. And actually, I have a position in Texas, but my responsibility is global. So
hold on, I've never heard of that company. How do you spell it again?
Yeah, Toyota. It's the real
Toyota.
Okay. Toyota, yeah. Toyota. Motor North America. And we used to be in Torrance, California for the sales and marketing arm, but now we're in
cars?
Plano, Texas. Yes. In fact, hate to brag a little bit, but we're the market leader right now, even surpassing GM and Ford. Yeah, no.
Gosh, wow. I just thought they made
trying to catch up here.
Yeah.
I thought they made lawnmowers.
Yeah, and market leader in California too, Lucas. So you just got to keep your eyes open. You'll see a couple.
We drive a Toyota. We are huge fans of Toyota.
Thank you.
Thank you. I used to be a bigger fan, but then I lost all this weight. I used to be a lot bigger.
Did you? And that was good for driving in Toyotas?
No, not necessarily. We have a Yaris, and but I love that little thing. It's perfect for zipping around parking lots, and that's been a really good car for us.
We've had a couple of those in our family. We've had 7 Prius in our family. Obviously, we've had a ton of Toyotas.
We think that Toyota is the gift that keeps on giving, myself, but I probably shouldn't say that because they're not paying us anything, at least right now. Bob can Bob can change that.
That's right. Maybe there's a sponsorship in the future. Toyota's doing well. I've been there twice, once for 22 years. That's the current
Wow, that's a long
session.
time.
And then I was there launching Lexus for 3 years. So a total of 25 years. I've worked for Ford Motor Company. I worked for General Motors, and I worked for 3 or 4 marketing agencies while in California. So that's about a 35-year stretch.
Wow. I did not, Bob, I did not know you had that much experience in corporate America. That's quite impressive.
Yeah, it's been a great learning experience. Before I came to Texas, I was in Tokyo for 3 years, and that was mind-blowing in terms of the corporate culture,
Oh
the
yeah.
societal culture, the collectivism.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
So, and
Wow,
I'm
that's
really, really happy to be in Texas. I mean, just the values here match up to mine very, very well.
Tell me your current position again at Toyota.
Yeah, my current position is I'm general manager of global sales support. And actually, we have an internal brand name, which is Best in Town International. Doesn't mean anything to an external person, but we're focusing on helping distributors meaning countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Peru, right, et cetera, be the best in town for providing service and customer satisfaction. So we bring a lot of our know-how from the US and we export it in the way of consulting and best practice sharing and knowledge management around the globe. So my group sits here in Texas, but all we do is work with global distributors, countries every day.
Wow.
That's cool.
It's great fun.
You did some marketing for a time too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. For Toyota here, just in the States, for 5 years, I was head of advertising for Toyota. And Toyota is the 6th largest advertiser in the United States behind Ford, GM, Verizon, and a couple insurance companies like Geico. And so a lot of work to do there to create meaningful advertising that supports our brand, supports our vehicles, supports sales events. It was great fun. And then prior to that, I had some product marketing as well, setting price parameters and packaging and specs and this sort of thing for certain models. It's been a great career at Toyota.
That's cool. Sounds like you've really been able to infuse your own your love for people in both of those areas, in the marketing and in this role that you're in now.
You know, you said it really well, Curtis. When a person, and I talk to college students about this sometime, when you can find a company where your values fit the corporate values, and not all companies have their corporate values very solid, right, that you can identify. Toyota does. When you find that match, you just got to find a way to stay there. And Toyota's corporate culture is 2 main pillars, continuous improvement and respect for people. And so that matches up with me real well. And a lot of us longtime Toyota folks say the same thing.
That's really cool to know that about Toyota. That's cool. You know, it's interesting because I'm a Toyota lover too. I had a Toyota Land Cruiser for forever. Amazing. 76 Toyota Land Cruiser, drove that thing for 20 years. So it was one of my favorite cars. I got 500,000 miles on it. I mean, you know, it was just like Lucas says, talk about the gift that keeps giving. But a huge fan. My father-in-law gave us a Camry, all these things. I mean, it was wonderful. But what as all this cultural things have happened, I've kind of been like, well, but you know, I don't know. They're not an American company, but I know they make a lot of cars here, and you know, I have that. I recognize that struggle. But it's really hard. It's really easy to look past all that when you're cutting across, I guess, nationalist lines, really, and going after the human person in the right ways, in flourishing ways. That makes it easy, you know.
Yeah, it's so true. When we can help equip our dealers who are sitting in the United States, they're American citizens, they're investing in their local communities, we can help equip them to be best in town in providing service and support. And we're not perfect, but we try to be perfect. Then Yeah, all the nationalistic stuff goes away. And then, of course, we also remind people that 8 out of 10 cars we sell in the U.S., we build in the U.S., in Kentucky and Indiana and West Virginia.
Give us that stat again. How many are built in the U.S.?
8 out of 10. So 80% of the
Okay.
cars, trucks, SUVs we sell in the U.S. are made in the U.S. And when you look at the top 10 content list of the magazines put out every year, this is the top 10 list of vehicles that have U.S. content in them, right? Not just assembled here, but also the parts were made here. We generally have 4 out of 10, sometimes 5 out of 10 vehicles on that list. And some of the brands that you might think would dominate that list only have 2 or 3.
Interesting.
Really poised. Toyota's really poised to be stable and okay in this supply chain issue everybody's dealing with.
Yeah, and to your point, Curtis, it gets back to the values of the company. Respect for people is not just customers, but it's employees. It's the communities we work in. I mean, believe it or not, our CEO made a statement 55 years ago, or I should say, the CEO 55 years ago made a statement that was repeated by the great grandson just a couple of years ago, who's our current CEO, and it's, we exist so we can make profits and pay taxes in the communities that we live and operate. You don't hear that from corporate America, but that's part of the ethos of this company. Is we're here respecting people, meaning the people that live and operate in our communities, by paying taxes, so we can support the roads and the highways and the healthcare and everything else. So
I'm so struck with how conservative that is, right? Just I mean, not necessarily what it's saying, which is conservative itself as well, but that a statement was said 55 years ago, and that same statement and value was carried that entire time across time and repeated again. That's a we call that tradition. We call that heritage. We call that conserving something that was good or is good.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So Bob, that was a great interview. Thanks. Just kidding.
Happy to talk about ministry too.
Yeah, let's get into you. You obviously are a true believer. I feel like I'm just really trying to read you, and you're giving the corporate talking points, but it seems like you really believe it. And I guess that's the best explanation for why you've been in that industry for so long, including your current company. Tell us about how you got into cars. How did you, what was it? What was the aha moment that you had where you were like, I want to do this industry?
Boy, that's really interesting. I got into the industry only because when I graduated, Ford Motor Company paid the most. So I had 3 offers, I had a marketing degree and a computer science, strong minor, and I really wanted to go in that direction. So I got an offer from Electronic Data Systems, Ross Perot's company, which has now been absorbed by General Motors, and then Pitney Bowes and Ford. And the difference was just so large that I went after the money. So I had no intention.
Where was this at? Where did you go to college?
So I went to Central Michigan University, the home of the Chippewas, and they're still the Chippewas today.
What town is that in?
That's in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. You know, us Michiganders, where always hold our hand up. It's right up here, kind of in the middle.
So it's in central Michigan.
Exactly. You got it.
Makes sense.
It makes sense. But to get back to your question, so I really didn't have a love for cars. You know, I'd fix stuff, but I'm not a tinkerer and that sort of thing. I don't have a big garage to work on cars. But it was a few years into my automotive industry career when I heard Dr. Fry from Northwood University. Now that's another, it's a private university, I think in Midland, Michigan. And Dr. Fry talked about the automotive industry, and it was the greatest vehicle, no pun intended, the greatest vehicle for facilitating and liberty and freedom.
Mm.
Because a car can take you anywhere, anytime, any place. And I felt that when I was young, when I got my license at 16.
Yeah.
And I still feel that today, you know, when my wife and I say, let's just go somewhere, anytime, any place, any reason. And that hooked me in terms of my own ethos and ideas around liberty and freedom and independence. And it kind of kept me in the industry. Then you just get momentum, you know, within a particular industry, and you stay in it. Even when I was doing these marketing agency jobs, I was calling on Mitsubishi and Mazda and Toyota and Lexus and Nissan and other companies in the industry.
So you specialized and then just ran with it. Yeah.
Just ran with it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Bob, what was it like being the head? Did you say you were the head of advertising for Toyota?
Yeah, for 5 years, I was the head of all of our creative advertising. So we had 4 agencies that reported into me and my team, and we were just constantly building, you know, commercials for TV and digital units. And
That sounds like a big job.
And it was a fast-paced, big job. And we had a little bit of some crises along the way, and then you get pulled into that. And that was a 24/7 job.
You have to do you have to do the Yaris commercials,
Mhm.
and then you guys make another model, right? It's like the Corolla.
A couple others, yeah, like a lot of them
2.
start with C's, yeah, Camrys.
So
and
you got
Corollas
like
and,
2 or 3 models you got to keep track of.
yeah.
And
20 some models actually on the Toyota side, about 22.
20?
You count them all up, yeah. And then you've got brand advertising. So you just want to talk about Toyota. Let's go places was the tagline that me and my team brought in. And so, yeah, it's a great, fun job working with creative people every day.
That's a great connection that you made about liberty and
Yeah.
cars.
Mm.
That's very interesting. And I totally relate to that because it is a very different feeling when you don't have to go through the line at the airport and, you know, get searched. And it's just so freeing to just get in your car and have your privacy, your own stuff, your own music, not have to wait in line, not have to wear a mask. I mean, I personally wear a mask in the car, and that's the only place I wear the mask when I'm driving alone.
Yeah,
But
sure, makes
I
sense.
want to fit in here in California. But yeah, that's so okay. So you went to college in
Yeah.
Michigan,
Mhm.
and you sounds beautiful, by the way, because you guys have 4 seasons up there, right? We don't
It's
have them
wonderful.
here.
That's
Wonderful
So you got the
area.
fall, you got the awesome leaves, right? All
Mhm.
that stuff. You got freezing winters, I'm sure.
Mhm.
You got an awesome spring where it's like new life and the birds come back, and yeah.
Colorful and beautiful.
And you chose to leave this wonderful place in Michigan to go where? Where'd you go first?
Yeah, went to California. So I took that job with Ford Motor Company, worked a few months in Detroit, and then they transferred me out to California. So my wife and I were in California from Michigan. It was a big deal, big times for us. That was back in the 1980s. And so I think California really had a lot of sizzle, had a lot of glimmer, and we enjoyed it. But quickly then we were transferred to Colorado, and we settled in there, bought a house, had our first child.
What part of California?
So we were in Orange County.
Okay.
Yeah. And Colorado, we were near the northern area, actually closer to Cheyenne than we were Denver.
Oh.
That was great. But then we went back to California, and then we had 2 other kids there, stayed for another 20 years. And that's when I worked for Lexus and Toyota and these marketing agencies for that period of time until around 2014, when I left the state for Maryland, and then went to Tokyo, and then boom, Texas.
So how long have you been in Texas?
Since about April of 19. So working on 3 years,
Okay.
not too
Right.
long.
And
Mhm.
you like it there? You like
Yeah,
Texas?
yeah, I love it here. I love the values. I love the sense of independence as well. The fact that we used to be our own country, and we could brag about that a bit. I really like that aspect of it. As a Christian, I like the attitudes, even within the public universities here, the acceptance. I mean, we haven't gone into that direction that I experienced in the East Coast when I was in Maryland, or certainly on the West Coast, of denying free speech, of the wokeism that calls somebody or changes the definition of the word intolerant, so you can now try to put somebody down and keep them down. So that's not totally established here, thank God.
Yeah, it's still actually a conversation and a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
I think that's enough to kick Bob off the program right now. Just his free speech attitude. I think we need to end this right here.
It is
Oh,
chilling.
yeah.
It's chilling.
Free speech is not something we're for here.
Oh, I don't believe that.
Just kidding. Bob, it's so refreshing to hear you say that. And I'm glad to hear that there's still some sanity there in the public schools and universities in Texas. So you're in the Dallas area, is that roughly right?
Yeah, north of
That's
Dallas.
a big area. Okay. And now when you were in Orange County, sounds like you had two different times. I don't know if it was both in Orange County, but
Yeah, they were.
okay. So you had two different times in Orange County. Is that when you went to Biola to get some
It is.
graduate training? Okay. Tell us about the
is.
graduate training and what led to
Yeah.
that. How did
Yeah.
you get into that and how did you know about that?
Yeah, people around me, particularly my son, this was probably around in the early 2000s, people around me were making statements, and maybe I was hearing it externally from advertisements, from movies, the media, all of the external factors. And I recall my son, who's my oldest child, making some statements, and I didn't know how to answer those statements. I knew that internally they didn't feel right to me. I couldn't explain why they
How old was your
weren't
son
right.
at that time? How old was he?
At that time he was probably 14 or 15, middle years in high school. And I just thought, I need to be equipped. This is not satisfying for me that I don't have an answer, right? Back to 1 Peter 3:15. So I heard about.
Can you say 1 Peter for 3:15? Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, I mean, I can paraphrase it for sure. It's always be ready to give a defense, and defense is apologia, at least in my Greek pronunciation, right? For the hope that you have, and to do it with respect and reverence. Those are, that's what we do at UNT and Ratio Christi. I'll talk about that in a minute. But back to when I had this cognitive dissonance, right? Not being able to explain things or understand what people were saying. I reread, this time a little bit more seriously, Mere Christianity, and got my wheels spinning. I heard about an apologetics conference at a real small church called Saddleback in Orange County. And it was an amazing weekend, sponsored by the church and some good people there. And Biola hosted that. So you had all the biggies on stage. And I didn't know their names at that time, but now I know. You had William Lane Craig, you had Craig Hazen talking about Biola and Talbot, you had Coco, Turek, et cetera, McDowell. And that's when I said, well, I'm a learning guy. I like to learn. I like to help people learn and grow and advance and develop. And so let's do that. So I signed up for the program, and I went through the certification program, not the master's program that Hazen and his team offer. And so it was distance learning for me. And but it was amazing. It just gave me resources and gave me insight and information. And now I'm just a steady learner in all of those channels, and I can't get enough.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, there's a never ending well to draw from.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're curious, you can keep yourself busy for the rest of your life on this stuff. It's not like you arrive and you
Yeah.
know everything,
And Lucas, so well said. And I think it was just a few years ago that I said, I can't boil the ocean here, right? I've got a full-time job, so this is part-time work for me, although it's my main passion. B, we all members of the same body, we all have specializations. And so I need to make sure when I do my thing, my ministry thing, that I'm not just trying to do it all myself. A, the quality will be not good, it'll be thin, and B, I'll burn out. So one of my themes in starting up this Ratio Christi ministry and the other apologetics that I do here in North Texas is to look for resources and to team up with people, help them, they help me. And I have some specialties.
How do you spell it again?
Ratio Christi.
Ratio Christi?
Yeah, RATIO space
Like
CH.
rational, except for the first part of rational.
It's
ratio.
Latin for the rationality of Christ.
And then Christi is
CHRIST.
Yeah. Okay. First part of Christianity, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, just while I'm on that, the Ratio Christi mission statement, it's a national organization. It's a global movement. Yeah, we have our basis here in the US, but actually the head of Ratio Christi International just lives 20 miles from me. So it's a global movement that equips university students and faculty to give historical, philosophical, and scientific reasons for following Jesus Christ. So yes, we work with students. We work in some cases with professors on campus. In some cases, we work with high school students, but it's generally around the university setting.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's very good. So one of the things I'm curious about is how Toyota played into you getting involved in Ratio Christi, or was it the other way around? Like, did Ratio Christi help you get involved in Toyota? Because Toyota had a little initiative going that I was surprised about, and I think is kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, I can say that my apologetics work and my Ratio Christi work was separate and distinct from Toyota. And Toyota is a company that really wants to fit in well and does a great job of it to whatever country that they're operating in. They want to be a bit of a chameleon, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but want to culturally assimilate. And so
that's a very Christian value, right? Being to all people, right?
It is.
Being able to relate wherever they're at.
Yeah, exactly. Think about Paul on Mars Hill. He did a great job of that. And so Toyota does a great job of that. But in that, Toyota has adopted a number of ideologies and areas that they celebrate. The gay pride flag goes up all month long. And that's been new maybe over the last 5 years in front of our building. And so I never really thought, it seemed like Christianity might be pushed out of Toyota versus having more free space to operate, right? And the 25 years I've been at Toyota, there were people who operated small, like Bible study groups at lunch, but it was always very informal. But Curtis, what I was mentioning to you the other day is Toyota has now launched, and this is done by the employees, not by the corporation, has launched an entity called Toyota Christian Fellowship. And it's got over 500 members from all around the country. And there's regular Bible studies, small groups, there's prayer collectives, outreach, to employees at Toyota, to support and to create servant leaders. That's their mission statement. So when that raised up,
and that's sponsored by the company.
So the company has a program, a larger initiative called business partnering groups, meaning employees can, kind of like a student organization at a university, right? If you want a basket weaving club, you got enough people, you could start it, and the university would say you're official. It's kind of like that. And so the long-standing business partnering groups have been focused on certain affinities. Like there is a group for African Americans, another group for Latinos, another group for Asian Americans. There's a group for pet owners. There's a group for LGBTQ. And it started out in that way. Well, the latest one is a group around the Christian religion and worldview. And so there could be another one centered around Buddhism.
Yeah.
But this one is there. And back to Curtis's question, there's now an apologetics group that's going, didn't start with me, but I've now connected into it, and I've offered to help support and teach and be a member of that group and community. So it's just awesome.
You know, Bob, I this wasn't even on my radar yet. But the more I've been since we talked, right? I've just been chewing on this, you know, like a cow, chewing it, spitting it up and chewing it again, and trying to think through that, because it goes against what I think a lot of people, not against, but there's some cognitive dissonance around it for sure, right? Like, how do I process this? And what's fascinating to me is this is really, Toyota is taking a step past what you see in all these other large multinational companies, like the social media and all this, where they're putting their like one ideology in front of all of them, right? And Toyota's saying, you know what, we need everybody to be successful. This is bigger than any one group. And I mean, I wouldn't, you know, I would never promote socialism, but if Toyota had a socialist group and a capitalist group, like they have in their worldview of how people come together and get things done, that would still fit there too, it seems.
Yeah, the business partnering group has specific criteria. It has to relate to, you know, supporting the business needs, supporting employee needs as well. And there's 3 or 4 others. And so this Christian community fits that criteria. I'm not sure all the things that you mentioned would fit that criteria necessarily. But I think your point is well taken, that that Toyota has said, we're not going to exclude a faith-based, you know, organization that receives an official endorsement from the company. We're not going to exclude that. I think that's awesome.
It's actually very mature.
It really is. See, it gets back to the 2 pillars: respect for people, and Toyota's showing that. So I think it's awesome. And it's actually, when I look at my apologetics ministry here in North Texas, it's the 3rd thing that I'm working on right now is that component, and it's basically taken up no time yet. But Curtis and I, when we got together a few weeks ago, it had just kind of hit my radar. And so I'm anxious to see where that goes in the future.
How much of the ministry at the company involves apologetics?
You know, I think there are 60 or 70 small groups that are meeting regularly, and they're doing kind of normal small group topics, maybe taking a book of the Bible or a study series or a video series, you know, on Right Now Media or something like that. There's only one that I'm aware of that has a focus on apologetics. And that's why the leadership at TCF, when they heard about that one and they know me, they hooked us up. So I think just one of those 60 or 70.
And Bob, how many hours a week do you work total? I mean, your job and the ministry combined.
Oh, you know, generally I'm doing one of those 2 things from say 7:30 to maybe 7 p.m., 7:30, something like that. And I'm really blessed in this time frame to be working from home most of the time, and with my wife. And so then we try to stay connected in that nighttime, time frame. So yeah, maybe 12 and a half hours. On Wednesdays, it's a little bit longer day because I'm at the university for that evening. Last Friday, I was there in the afternoon late afternoon to do some tabling, but yeah, I try to get a lot done in that time frame.
So your work with Ratio Christi is primarily on campus, on a college campus, not at the Toyota Corporation?
That
Is
is
that correct?
correct.
Okay.
100% at the campus or virtually. Like I run a book club.
I think I missed that part.
Yeah. So let me describe that. So Ratio Christi, I got involved with them in Maryland. That's when I came out of Biola. I knew I wanted to apply my new knowledge and my growing knowledge. And I'm a good facilitator. I'm not an expert in any area. I like to say that I mostly swim in the shallow end of the pool, and lean on others for their expertise. But I knew I had to apply this, and I could do that. And so I got involved at University of Maryland. Ratio Christi had a pretty extensive application process and approval process. I was impressed with that, right? What did I know about theology? What did I know about apologetics? What was my creed, my Christian creed? And then based on all that, they approved me. So now I'm at University of Maryland for about only a year before I went to Tokyo. As I'm in Tokyo, I'm doing some Ratio Christi stuff, but that's not the right environment for it. And I knew I wouldn't be there long, but I was planning on coming back to North Texas, and UNT did not have a Ratio Christi chapter. So my wife and I kind of figured out we'd live close to here and the Toyota office. And then just doors got opened for me, and it was truly God's providence. I met Guido Verbeck, and he gave me names, and I'm a sales and marketing guy by nature. So I can easily call people and ask them for a cup of coffee and their advice. And the next thing you know, people are just helping, because this environment here in Texas is very conducive to people like me wanting to bring this sort of truth seeking message on the campus. And so what do I do then? Every week, I either teach or bring in a speaker every Wednesday at 7 p.m. I've teamed up with a local ministry that is right on the edge of campus. They have a facility right on the edge of campus, and we meet there. It's actually a former fraternity house. So it's got a stage and everything where they used to have bands playing. It's really an awesome venue. And that's every Wednesday. But of course, I need to recruit speakers to come in, set in a schedule, do the tabling, because we're a new group, and get ourselves known and familiarize ourselves on campus. And then we're doing one all campus event per semester. And we're going to do that March 30th with actually Institute for Creation Research. They're going to come up and do a presentation called Adam, period, not apes. And so, you see the topic matter there, and we're going to pull in a larger group of a couple hundred people, God willing. So that's what I do on a regular basis for Ratio Christi, and just keep that running. I've got a couple speakers lined up for the fall already. And I'm just, I'm a business person, so I'm thinking about my supply and my demand, and trying to manage those two things at the same time.
Very cool.
You got a lot on your plate.
Yeah, I do, but I don't, my wife says that occasionally to me as well. And I take the cue from her to balance it out. But like I said, there's so many resources. If you try to do it all yourself, you're sunk. You might as well be a hermit, and then you won't do a good job, and the students won't want to be around you. So I've been
Sounds
really
like your skill set is bringing people together.
Yes.
Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Facilitating, collaborating, it is a skill set, and I'm using it in this way. And I get a chance to teach, maybe every fourth or fifth time. So that really helps me too, to learn, because when you teach, you learn, right? And practice my own skills at being an apologist who's winsome and who's inquisitive and not dogmatic, right? So all those things are learnings for me as well.
It's a hard thing to learn how to say I'm sorry really well. Or did you
Yes,
mean
yeah.
something else by be an apologist?
Well, sometimes you have to say that as
Did I
well.
misunderstand?
And
Oh,
I certainly have found myself saying that more often than not when I
you're sure
say something.
apologizing a lot.
When I say
You must
something
feel
in a
guilty about
meeting,
something.
but
Yeah.
it's, as you know, it's the defense in a philosophical way, right? Of the faith. In fact, the easiest thing for me to say to a student to explain what we do, because our target is someone who identifies as a Christian, but they don't really have it together to answer the tough questions. So I'll ask them, so tell me, why are you a Christian? And boom, they'll quickly go to, well, I was raised in a Christian home and my parents are Christian, my grandparents were Christian, or my grandfather was a pastor. Okay, well then why should I be a Christian? Well, because it helps me and God. I was tabling last week and asked somebody that question. God will do things for us. He'll help us out. Is that right? So it's kind of the big vending machine in the sky, right? The big daddy in the sky. And so if those two questions can't be answered well by someone who identifies as a Christian, then I say, hey, the answers to those things are in Ratio Christi. If, stay with your other group, you need that other group, camp, crew or InterVarsity or some of the other campus groups, stay with them because they're a great community for you, but attend our sessions as well. And whether Zoom or in person, we're going to teach you things that help you be that apologist, that 1 Peter 3:15 person who can give a defense or give a reason for the hope that is in them. If you can't give that reason on the campus, then you're really going to be sunk.
Can I ask you a question? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you can't give that reason, it's not just about reaching others. It's about you. You'll
start there.
Yeah, because we need that hope, kindled, and we need those to lean on those reasons for our own faith.
So true, so true. I think about Hillary Ferrer. If you know Hillary, she's one of the main authors of Mama Bear Apologetics, the book, and now the website and the speaking series.
You said Hillary, and my blood pressure went up, and then you said another name, and I was like, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah,
Lord.
no, this is a different Hillary. Yeah,
so Hillary, what's her last name?
Ferrer.
How do you spell it?
FERRER.
Oh, wait, did you say Mama Bear Apologetics?
Mama Bear
Oh,
Apologetics.
I follow them. Oh yeah, they're great.
Yeah, we
awesome.
talked about when we were together at lunch. I was like, oh,
yes,
we should have her on. That would be great.
She's amazing.
It's
the rest of her team, yeah, they're amazing. But she did us a great service by talking to our students, actually kicking off this semester. And she was talking about emotionalism. But to Curtis's point, she talked about the value of apologetics in her life. Before she could ever extend her faith out, she went through a period of doubt, and apologetics helped her secure and create a foundation and ground her faith really well. And now she's off and running. So yeah, without that, and to your point, Curtis, a lot of those students who identify as Christians, they are fence sitters right now.
Yes.
They don't really even know if they should stay on the team. And so a lot of what we do, maybe 70-80%, is giving them answers. And then we give them opportunities when we table or we do ministry on campus to extend that knowledge outward and the rest of their lives, frankly.
Yeah, apologetics is like a gateway to discipleship.
Oh, bingo. Well said.
What's blowing my mind about this conversation is you have a businessman. You're obviously very good in the corporate world, but the corporate mentality, the business mentality, and the business training is I think I've taught in business departments for over 10 years, and I come from a family of entrepreneurial spirit, and my grandfather started and owned a restaurant chain all across the United States. Um, but like what you were saying about the chameleon, that gives me anxiety when I hear that. I mean, I know Curtis had a different reaction, and to some extent, it is true that Christians are sort of like that. I mean, it's good mission mindset to be a kind of a chameleon to a point, and I know that's what you meant, Curtis, but just to push that in a little bit more, to be free speech at this window of time, because in this area that fits the culture, is not to be free speech. That's not to have the principle that it doesn't matter if it fits with the culture, we're pro free speech. But at the same time, if you're a business, the whole point of the business is to create profits, to create a good product and make people happy, and
Bring value.
to bring profit to the company. And the business mindset that so many believers have, like what you said, how they relate to God, what's the point of relating to God? Well, it's like a business relationship. I'm networking with God. He can eventually get me something. And that's just not a firm, just like with the free speech, it's not a firm foundation going forward. So what you're doing is, it's interesting. I mean, you really do have a firm foundation. You personally, I'm talking about you're bringing that firm principle there in business culture, and you're also bringing it through your ministry, which is what we need to flourish. I think it's the best ultimate place, something that respects people, really does respect people, not just to fit in, because fitting in might disrespect people, right? I mean, we've seen that.
Yeah.
But in history, we don't have to list all those out, but to have that vision of how people flourish, right? We're created in the image of God, bringing ICR in, helping people answer those questions, being ready to defend the hope with reverence and gentleness and respect. And that's really exciting for me to see that a business person like yourself decided I need to be more equipped to bring the conditions for flourishing and healing and growth into not only the business world, but also what's pumping out all our future employees, which is the campus culture. Because those are the future CEOs, those are the future team leaders, supervisors, line employees, managers. And how can we support you? What's your website? How do we find out more information about how to get involved? You're in the Dallas area, or whatever city you're in.
Well, yeah, thank you. And Ratio Christi, again spelled RATIOCHRISTI.org.
We'll link that.
Yeah, and
we'll link whatever you want us to link.
I'll send you the specific link for University of North Texas as well. If anyone wanted to, even $25 helps me buy pizza for one of our meetings. And the more food we have, and the better it is.
That's really good.
The more people try to come. But I'll give you both of those links, and then the ratiochristi.org website. People can find out more about this organization that is ready for them. And we have we've got about 170 chapters right now in the States, but we want to get to 1,000. And so we're on an aggressive growth pattern. I'm not responsible for that, but there's other people that are. And so if you're a person like me, and I think that's what I really like, Lucas, about what you said, if you're a person like me who has a heart for loving God and then loving our fellow man, And that fellow man, my passion happens to be for the student. I think they're fun to be around. I think they're engaging. I think their brains are just kind of finishing, developing. And so what a great opportunity. So if you have that same sort of passion, then RC is a group that can just help you facilitate directing those passions in the right way. Even if you come into a chapter, and I've had 2 or 3 people now in my 2 years who've just come into my group as adults, and they're watching, they're learning. One of them went and started his own chapter at TCU, and others are learning, and now they're doing more at their church, like an every Sunday kind of apologetics group. So we can support each other that way. And RC is a great platform with resources and stability and an infrastructure. So yeah, that would be my encouragement for anyone who's got that organizational ability, maybe like I have, and can pull other people in. That's what it takes. That's what it takes to get things going. Now, I hope and I pray that God continues to bless us at UNT, and that He gives me personal opportunities to do more of this. But God's going to lead. We just stay faithful, and He brings His Spirit into play, and He knows where we're going to need to go next. Whether it's a topic, or whether it's a new ministry at a new venue. We'll just.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you pick the topic? Like, is it just something that's on your heart personally, or are you hearing back from people?
Yeah.
How do we know that we are created by God, or something? How do you?
Yeah. So I, again, using this sort of business background, I think about my customers, and I've got the 4 buckets of philosophy, science, history, and then society, right? And I'll pick some things out in those buckets and create kind of a master list. And then I ask my officers and other students through just a polling system, hey, what interests you most? What direction should we go? And then I try to use that as a basis, for putting things together. I'll tell you, for example, this started an idea, that process started an idea 1 year ago, that instead of every session being a topic like intelligent design or AI or the historicity of the Bible, right? Standard apologetics topics. Instead of teaching topics, let's have a collaborative sort of coffee shop setting where we're discussing topics related to public policy. How do we go there? And what we did, I worked with one student on this, graduate student, and we called it think tank, because that's what think tanks do, right? Secular, whether they're conservative, Hoover Institute, or they're
smart marketing.
Yes. And then we have a topic. So we've been able now to discuss, does a Christian have an obligation to even be in the public sphere? And we use the Bible to answer that question. How does a Christian make decisions on social programs? Do you vote for this social program or not? We talked about euthanasia, laws around death and dying. We're going to talk about transgender and sexual identity laws coming up, and connect all that back to the Bible. So that's an example of students kind of saying, hey, we want to get a little bit more relevant. And so we developed this series, and I teach that, and I have a lot of fun with it. I bring a ton of resources in, obviously, from others, but
I know Lucas is kind of drooling a little bit about those kinds of ideas, because that's what he loves that, and he's really good at.
Well,
bringing the law into it.
I have a weird background, Bob. I don't think, maybe you don't know, I don't know, but I taught philosophy for over 15 years I've taught actually from K through 12 through the university system. So I've taught 185 college and university courses. A few of those have been on high school campuses. That's why I say K through 12, but in the LAUSD district, I guess the D is district. So it's like saying USB number for a book. The B is the book, means
Right.
book, USB. But anyway, the comment I was going to make was that my PhD is in public law and
Oh
American.
my goodness.
So I'm
Yeah.
bringing I
Mhm.
pivoted to exactly what you're talking about. And those are all the tough, I guess they're all tough topics, to be honest with you, but those are tough in a social way, I think,
Mhm.
like being included and feeling like
Mhm.
it's kind of risky, like socially,
Yes,
you
yes.
know, to,
And I'd also say, to add to that, so it's Think
yeah.
Tank is the series name, and the subtitle is Christian Civil Civics. So that's our emphasis, right? Christians in a civic way, but doing it in a civil manner, which is not present today, right? So teaching that through each session is kind of our goal.
I can see how that fits with Toyota too, the corporate.
Mm.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, civil society.
Respect.
I'm a big fan of civil society. I think I don't want to see it disappear. If you know what that word means, it's a technical word in political science, like in American politics. Civil society,
Civics.
I would refer anybody who wants more on that, a deep dive on that, to Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. He talks a lot about civil society. He came from France in the early 1800s and just observed the phenomenon of America. And he talks about civil society and these voluntary organizations that show up where people get together and the government didn't make them do it. They just spontaneously had an interest in mind together. And of course, being civil is part of that. You can't make that work unless you're nice to each other. No, it's like a bowling league, or it could be,
Mhm.
it could be, I mean, you name it,
Mhm.
any
Shooting
number
club.
of things. Sure, absolutely. Shooting club.
Mhm.
Um,
Office environment, right? I mean, it's how C.S. Lewis
anything.
finally
Yeah.
got to the point, because he was respected. There was civil discourse amongst him and all of the Inklings, and J.R.R. Tolkien finally said something that clicked. And
Well, and having a flourishing civil society is, I think de Tocqueville got this, is that's the magic of America. It's not, it's the government had a remote function
Mhm.
for people back then. And the larger and more obtrusive government gets, as the American citizen kind of shrinks into a governmentally dependent person, uh, the civil society is choked off, I think. So it's great. What you're doing is awesome. I wanted to make one more connection, which was, I'm forgetting what it was at this point, but let's see if I can remember what it was. Well, maybe it wasn't that important to talk about, but yeah. So you have ministries all across the United States, and they're primarily on college campuses. Is that fair to say? Would you say, Ratio?
There's a segment that is focused on high school for someone that's got a burning desire and passion and opportunity to do that. And then there's also a segment that's focused on the professors in the
Oh, wow,
university.
that's strategic.
Because if we can get their hearts and minds, and even to teach them just how they
Yeah.
can practice their Christianity and free speech, it's important too.
How's the funding work? That's one of, I had two questions actually. The funding, can, let's say you're local and you want to only support your local chapter. I don't know if you call it a chapter, but
Yeah, we do.
how do you make sure your $25 for that pizza goes to that exact ministry?
Yeah. So there's a couple different pathways. You can go to ratiochristi.org. You
Okay.
can say donate. you type University of North Texas, and then you go to that specific, and it tells you,
Okay.
or just use the link. Like I'll send you the link.
Okay.
But in addition, I contribute to the overall RatioChristi.org because that pays for the organization as well. And then each person, like myself, I'm considered a chapter director, and I could, if this was my full-time ministry, and I needed income in order to support that full-time ministry, then I would recruit sponsors, and then they would contribute directly, to me through the UNT chapter. So there's all those avenues directly. I happen to be in this part-time, I have the full-time gig, so I don't ask for contributions for me, but just for the students, for fees for conferences, or food or signage, posters, things like that. So there's all those different ways to manage it.
Cool. And the other thing I remembered was the comment about quality. And so I was going to ask you a question, but I didn't want it to be misunderstood. I was going to ask you how many people you reach. And I wanted to qualify that because I think I don't like it when people go right to the numbers, because that quantified way of measuring quality, I think, is flawed from the beginning. Because then if you're just asking about numbers, how many people you reach, how many people attended, this and that, how much are you rate, that kind of sidesteps the quality issue, right? Because every person is valuable to God.
Yeah.
And everybody's made in the image of God. If you reach one person, the Lord looks at that the same, I think, as if you reached 1,000 people. Now, that's not how we think, especially if you run a ministry and you're trying to justify your existence. Not that you're trying, I'm not saying that's what this is about, but I'm just saying for people in ministry or any organization, oftentimes numbers come up. And so I think it's important to contextualize the question about numbers in a warmer environment for the individual person. I think the concern is that. So I only ask because I'm not saying that's how I measure quality. I'm personally more impressed with high quality apologetics to 10 people than I am milquetoast watered down to 100 people. Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, it makes great sense to me. And it's how I'm thinking too, particularly I'm in the startup phase, right? I think there's 120 different student organizations at UNT. So I'm probably the newest one. I'm certainly the newest Christian one. And it's going to take a while to get going. So be patient. And I talk to our officers a lot, and I use the phrase, and I'm talking to myself as much as I am to them. We're being faithful, and God will deliver the harvest. And so there's different layers of this quality and a quantity equation. For example, when last semester, and that was our first semester as an official student organization, we did an all-campus event that we recruited for in the student union, so a neutral area and a well-known area. And we brought an outside speaker in, and we got a crowd of 45 people. We'd set up for 75 or 80. So it didn't look like it was a failure to those that were sitting there. There was a little bit of room.
Can I ask how many of those 45 people, how many of those people were created in the image of God? I just got to, I want to get the numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
The demographics.
I think, as far as I could tell, all 45 were humans created in the image of God. Yeah. And
okay. So 100%, you're batting 100%.
100%. And then furthermore, to kind of go down the scale, when I sit at a table with one of my officers or students, and we're now greeting people as they're walking in, which we did last Friday. They're walking in the student union, and we're saying, "Hey, have you heard about Ratio Christi?" Or we put a question up, Answer the question and get a snack. And the question is, what do you believe about God? And now we get some conversations going and we get a chance to promote. So now there's another 20 or 30 people. And, just from you guys probably know Greg Kokel well. Greg says, our job is to garden and drop a pebble in their shoe. And, the person that I talked to at the table, I might see them again in 2 years and they remember me and they've connected on a few things and they've joined our group me. And so they've seen some of this. So it's just hard to know what's happening in this garden. And then our weekly meetings is more focused and intense. And the size of our group has been as large as 17, but no larger than that. And as small as like 5. And when the 5 are there and I bring an outside speaker, I get a little pit in my stomach, right? But I try not to let that impact me because I know those 5 are really being blessed and enriched. And our mechanism is we record everyone, whether it's a live person or they come in on Zoom, we record it, we put it on a YouTube private channel, and then I send that out and I get a few views on those. And then finally, going deeper in the funnel, my officers and I have a great ability to go deeper together. And so I have a book club with them. And then we read through, actually, we're reading through Turek's book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, one chapter at a time. And now we have deep discussions and deep conversations. And then we go back and forth. So I see all those layers in this quality quantity mix, and just we're going to stay faithful and see what God, delivers in the harvest.
I want to say, I really like that. I mean, that's just, that speaks, I don't know about you, Lucas, but that speaks to me in what Lucas and I are doing here. Just being faithful and trusting that God will provide, that he's where our provision lies. It made me think, like, when I was a youth pastor many years ago, I remember was showing up to youth group one night, and it was raining or something, and there were like 2 kids, and the other guy that was kind of handing off the ministry to me, he was one of my mentors, early mentors, just awesome guy, Kurt Hanks. And he said to me, I was like, well, what do we do? There's only 2 people, and he goes, we teach. and it was just like, it was such a profound moment for me in my young reaching out to people. And I've brought that into coaching as well, where it's like, sometimes girls will come over and they'll want to play and there's only 3 people. Well, okay, so we're not having practice, but we're having a private lesson, and you're going to get a lot better at some things that other people are going to miss out on for whatever reason that they didn't come. So here we go. And it's like, you're given private lessons when it's 5 and you're given group lessons when it's 17. That's great. I just love it. No matter what, we teach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We stay faithful.
I got an anecdote for you, Bob, because I'm really glad to hear that the quality quantity thing is on your radar, because oftentimes it just needs to be on your radar. Really. Yeah. For a lot of people, doesn't even seem to be something they think about. Mm-hmm. But I had at Cal State Northridge, which is in the city of I call it Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Big Cal State school, I think it's like 40,000 students. I had a Saturday class, no, it wasn't business ethics. It was logic. Yeah, it's logic. And it was, I think 3 people signed up for it, which my normal class is a full classroom, so it was a little odd. I was like, And I showed up. I actually didn't check the roster before I drove up there from Orange County, but I showed up to class, and the campus was kind of empty on Saturday. I like teaching on Saturdays, to be honest with you. It's just kind of the traffic is easier. It's just easier. So I get up there, nobody's there. Then I'm like, do I still have a class? I'm thinking for my paycheck, right? It's all about the money for me. Bob, to be honest with you. Just that's for you. I'm going to edit this part out, but it's really for me, it's all about the money. But anyway, I check my roster there in the classroom computer and I see there's only 3 people. And none of them are there on the first day of class. So I'm like, I guess they're going to drop or something. I think it was like, no, it was 5 people. I think 5 people or something. And then 3 showed up eventually. And of those 3, 1 person stayed the whole semester. So I taught a class with 1 person. And that semester, I had to really process the quality quantity thing in my mind because I had to deal with my own anxiety about pay and money, and Cal State let that class go. And I don't know exactly why. I have a feeling it's because it was a special schedule and they have some kind of policy on reaching under, people that work full time. I don't know what I didn't ask. It's not like I was going to ask. Who knows why maybe it was an accident. But anyway, this kid's dad was Mel Gibson's personal assistant. And there's more to the story that I'm not going to share, but it got me thinking, on this project too, if we get 30 views on a video, I personally think that's a win because that's typically what my classroom is. And that's fine. I'll teach a whole semester with 30 people. And I'm confident that God will bring the right people.
Amen.
Who he wants to reach. Just the right person. What I mean by the right person is not somebody famous or even necessarily someone who knows somebody famous. That's not what I mean. I don't want to give that impression. But I mean, I have to say that because I'm in Los Angeles and that's kind of a lot of the mentality for a lot of people, not just in LA, all across America. But it's about reaching who the Spirit is working in at that moment. And this was a logic class, right? And we ended him and I ended up having, he was a Hispanic kid, Mexican kid. And he and I ended up having conversations that professors and students just never have. And going pretty deep in logic as well. I mean, I taught the class as if it was full and it was just 1 person there for like most of the semester. The others showed up like here and there for a couple of weeks and then they didn't drop until it was too late. But yeah, so I had to really process that at that time. And I'm not saying I have it any figured out, but I mean God put that on my radar. The quality quantity thing, and I had to confront it. Thank God I got paid, so it wasn't that issue, but it was
that's for another time.
It's perennial. It doesn't go away. And so the mystery of what the Lord is doing in economics, politics, in people's hearts, discipleship, what he's doing doesn't always match the programs that we have and the money and all that stuff. It doesn't quite match in our minds. And so getting those two as close as possible, like it seems like it's never exactly a fit between our programs and God's priorities. But just having it on your radar, and that's where I'm at now. I don't know. What you think about that. You probably thought about that.
Yeah, Lucas, can I speak to? I think we're all amen on what you just said. I mean, that's the way to think of it. But I also would like to speak to the other side of the coin, because I've been in ministries before, churches particularly, where the attitude is kind of copped, like, hey, it doesn't really matter how we do this thing, because we're just going to be faithful and God will provide. And for my ministry, and then for other Ratio Christi chapters that I've been involved in, if we have to balance, right? It's 2 sides of the same coin. We have to balance this quality quantity thing, because if we don't see fruit, then maybe there's some actions, some countermeasures that, in the Toyota speak, we would take and that we ought to take. For example, when's the last time you tabled? I'll give you another example. My officer team and I, when we developed our charter and our student organization, we developed a brand promise. In other words, we said, this is how we want our student organization to be perceived on campus. When people think of us, they don't think intolerant nerds, because that's what can happen in apologetics. They think warm, fun, intelligent, discussion oriented. They think these things that we want them to think. So we always have to make ourselves be that and not that. And that means our flyers, the way we greet people. So we do have to hold ourselves accountable. That's my only point. But we do the best we can in that both sides of the coin. We can't lose sleep over it, but we do need to do the very best we can to be great representatives of Jesus on campus and loving God with your heart, soul, and your mind, and that doesn't mean you're a nerd, because that's the natural tendency, right? Guys that want to talk about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, right? And sometimes I find myself in that same spot too, and I got to pull myself out of it, Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when I hear that, I hear self-awareness. It's your skill set. You're marketing yourself. That's not a choice. It's happening. You are, there is a perception.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it? What is it that people see you as? And so just being aware of that and saying, well, is that who we really are? Is that, and then the angels dancing on the head of a pin, that's a great comment because that's about self-awareness, I think. Just like, I mean, so many times in the philosophy department at Biola, I was like, if people were watching what I'm seeing, this discussion, just like, they would probably leave philosophy forever. It's like, people getting into the weeds so deeply, but I mean, private conversations are one thing, but yeah,
right.
how things are perceived is really, and I suck at that. I mean, like, that's probably why I only had one guy show up to my logic class. This is how it was marketed. Logic. Yes or no?
Oh, yeah,
logic.
I do that.
And
Everybody.
so there was
that
like one guy that was like, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great skill. The kids today, they need logical thinking. And, we haven't talked about logical fallacies yet, but I mean, just to help them spot the top 2 or 3, that'll serve them the rest of their life. I know you know this so well.
Well, I want to point out too, that there's I want to say it's apologetical in a sense to even have that perception that you're talking about on your radar, because that's like an open door. To be inviting to others is an apologetic in and of itself. It's part of the skill set. When
that's a really good point, Curtis. That's a really good point.
I'm reminded of a circumstance, I guess, where I was coaching and 2 of my kids didn't make the grade to be able to play, right? And so I just wanted to confront it right up front in the open with everyone. Not everybody would approach it this way, but I said, all right, so-and-so, you need help in this subject. So-and-so, you need help in this subject. Who's good in this subject? Blah, blah, blah. And the kids were kind of like, all of the kids were like, oh, we're talking about this in volleyball. And I said, hey, we're a team on and off the court. We do both and we support, this is our culture, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the kids said something like, well, that's a little nerdy, or something like that. And I said, I'm a nerd. Do you know, I mean, I've studied this, I've done this, blah, blah, blah. I'm good in both areas. And that's what we are at this school. We're scholar athletes. Because that's what I had said, the word scholar. and we're going to be scholarly. And one of the guys like, that's such a nerdy word, scholar, and I said, but I'm a nerd, and so I immediately normalized it in the group, and they were like, huh, okay, we're scholars too. And over weeks, it made a difference actually in everybody, and it made a difference in our team, and it bonded us together. And it's all that perception that you're talking about. It goes to talk to your point about how important that is. And it changes their minds, because as we know, most social problems we have are in our own heads. Whereas if we just are normal and approach people as if everything's normal, much more is normal. So I just really like that you pointed that stuff out. I just wanted to share, connect with that. I think it's important.
I don't know how many courses they have in the apologetics program on being warm, or but you're a great example of using standard business skills like marketing and stuff like that for Christian apologetics.
Absolutely.
We want to be respectful of your time, Bob. Curtis, did you have anything you wanted to finish with?
No, this is like other stuff with, you get somebody that God brings and you just want to spend a ton of time with them, but we can do another time, talk about
follow up with you.
I'd love it.
Bob, tell us again your website. How do we support what you're doing?
Yeah. And the website for Ratio Christi, it's RATIOCHRIST, ratiochristi.org. And then you can just click on University of North Texas and you'll go to our donation page. And if you stay on that main page, then you can learn all about Ratio Christi and our chapters around the country, our resources. And, for those of you that have this passion to take what you know and then to practically give it to others, Ratio Christi is a great platform for that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we are so grateful for your time, for joining us today on our little time together, and we look forward to connecting with you again.
It's been a real blessing. Thanks, Lucas. Thanks, Curtis. Have a great day and weekend.